Goodwin. Really interesting material there, and our mission is to move some of the material to let you know what's there, so that you can come and find the things that you might be interested in as the history of this town. So one of the things they came across was a play by Prestonia Martin, and we decided to put it on this afternoon. And I will let Peter introduce the play, introduce our speakers. But know that you're always welcome to come to the archives and check it out.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for coming. We know this play was first produced or read almost precisely 110 years ago in New York City. We have one testimony that was done a second time in Glens Falls. But this could be the third reading, or it could be the 200th reading. We don't really know. You can judge from the performance whether it should be 200 readings or only 3 or 4. It's a fun satire with lots of interesting biting comments on issues of the day, and we hope you'll enjoy it. We included 3 excellent actors from the community here in Keene. We'll introduce them later, I guess, when they take their bows. We're also working on recording this on video, and with any luck, it'll be available in some places after this. You also just have to do it again and again and again by popular demand. So I think we're ready to go, right? I'll read the stage direction intro, and the chief character in this dialogue is played by Susie Doolittle. Come right here. She's a giant named commercialism. We behold her looking through a magnifying glass into the roof of a cottage in which a woman is engaged in housework and the care of children. After watching her carefully for some time, the giant returns to her palace, seats herself upon the throne, summons his minion Necessity, sometimes known as Pamela Gothner, whom he addresses.
I have again been watching woman at work in her home. As I told you, it's sheer economic waste for her to be spending her energies upon her family. She should be brought out of the home and put commercially at work. Have you obeyed my orders and summoned her?
Your Majesty, the woman refuses to leave her family.
Did you remind her that she is a slave in the home?
I did, Your Majesty, but she said that being a slave to her family was no worse than being a slave to you.
Did you offer her wages?
I did, Majesty, but she said that she had a sufficiency and was content.
She must be got out of the home.
I dare not use force, Your Majesty. I have to remember habeas corpus and Magna Carta, etc.
But offer her economic independence, extras, money of her own, etc.
She says that she has her work to do at home.
Then take her work away from her. Take away her spinning and weaving and knitting and baking and brewing and needlework. They shall all be commercialized. That makes business for me.
Your Majesty, she says that even then she still has to prepare the food for her family.
Oh, well, use some ingenuity. Put a delicatessen store on the corner near her home.
But Your Majesty, she says that she must teach her children.
Build schools for them. That's easily managed.
But Majesty, she says that she must train the little children herself.
Start some kindergartens. Take all the children off her hands.
But the baby.
Day nurseries, creches, that's the thing. Get her out of the home. I must have more workers, more income, more wealth, more profits. Get her out of the home, bring the women into industry, commercialize them.
Your Majesty, they are coming out of the home by the thousands.
Thousands, I want 1,000,000, I must have cheaper labor.
But Majesty, they persist in preferring homework with its change of occupation. Long hours at one thing are hard for them.
Well, if it's necessary in order to get them, make things a little easier. Get some laws passed shortening their hours of labor, give them seats in shops, some restrooms and things like that. Do what is necessary, of course. Only get them out of the home. That's the thing. Get them out.
They are coming, sire. Look at them. You asked for 1,000,000. There are 2,000,000 and they still come.
They shall come faster. Put on more pressure. See how I am guarding. I set them to competing with men, lowering men's wages so that men cannot support families, and driving men altogether out of some vocations. I'm spending millions in advertising in order to stimulate women's wants, to get them to craving more and more things so that they will come out and earn wages in order to get them. I'm doing my part. You do yours. Get them out of the home.
Alas, Majesty, I do my best, but many are still reluctant. Some of them say conditions in industry are too hard, and some of them are making bold to suggest
What?
they are venturing to ask for something which they are being told in some quarters will better their conditions. I hardly dare mention it.
Speak out. What is it?
They are asking for the vote.
Oh, is that all? Why, that's all right. Why not give it to them? What harm will it do?
But Your Majesty, I thought,
You thought nothing. You can't see an inch beyond your nose. They're asking for the vote as a good sign. It shows that they are restless and discontented, don't know exactly what they want, and are grasping at any straw. What harm can they do with the vote? Haven't the men had it for a century or more? And has it ever bothered me a jot? Haven't I grown to my present gigantic dimensions during the very period that they have had it? Haven't I made the workers work as hard? It's never put a pebble in my way.
true, Your Majesty.
Give them all the votes they want. They are good playthings. Voting takes very little time away from work, and nothing, and anything which diverts their attention from the home is to the good. Get them to competing with men in politics, as they do now in industry. It's all to the good.
Your Majesty, you have the vision of a god. I had not seen that far.
I have the vision of a god when it comes to seeing where my interests lie. My real enemy is the home. Those little fortresses dotted all over the land. Those little spots where competition is checked and cooperation reigns, where the family snuggles down in safety and men, women, and children waste one another's energies on each other, which I might turn to profit. The home must be shattered, opened up, so that I can get the meat out of the nut. Chase them all out, men, women, and children.
Majesty, it shall be done. 8 million women and hundreds of thousands of children are now at your disposal.
Good. Getting the children was a great idea. In cotton and many industries, their little figures are better than adults, and they are cheaper.
Majesty, when the older children are at work, there's no one left in the homes for the babies and the old people. Shall I let them remain?
No, put the aged in institutions. That's the cheapest way to dispose of them, and the babies in day nurseries. As I say, get them all out. An empty home, that's what I'm after. I'll get there finally, but it's slow work, and your incompetence is maddening. Here are millions of women still remaining in the home. Why don't you get hold of them somehow?
I am helpless, Your Majesty. Their husbands are still able to support them.
There must be some ways to get them out. Use your imagination.
I've done my best.
Why not try calling them names? Tell them they are parasites. Tell them the home is a harem. Tell them women at present are stunted. They're in a state of arrested development. Tell them that marriage is legalized prostitution. Tell them.
Majesty, you forget. I have but one weapon, necessity, and these sheltered women are beyond the reach of that. I cannot dislodge them.
Then I will have to find someone who can. The home must be turned inside out. Everything and everybody in it shall be commercialized. Art, religion, education, love, friendship, the family. Then at last I shall be monarch of the globe.
Majesty, I can do no more. You need a cleverer servant than I, one who knows how to delude and cajole women.
That's it, fool, you've got it. I need someone with enthusiasm, resources, someone who can coax women out of the home who don't need to go. Make them think the home is a prison and glory lies outside it. Who can do this service for me?
Majesty, I know the very person. Her name is Feminism. She can do all that you ask. I will summon her.
I have long admired you and your wonderful achievements. In what way can I assist you?
I need your help, Feminism, in fulfilling my design. The object of life is the accumulation of wealth, and everything should bend to this end. But despite my utmost efforts, large amounts of human energy are still running to waste in other channels. The most extravagant of all institutions is the home. In this practical age, it is an anachronism. Think of hundreds of cook stoves where one communal one would do. Think of separate firesides where one bonfire of colossal range might answer the purpose. Think of single nurseries instead of common dormitories. All this is waste. In the family, men, women, and children squander time, strength, and thought on one another. The family is outworn, cumbersome, an obstacle on the road to progress.
I am of the same opinion, Your Majesty, but not so much because it is wasteful as you think, but because it is narrowing. But we agree that it must go.
Very good, we are agreed. Now to work. Where shall we begin?
The place to begin is with the father, the husband, once rightly called the house band, who bands the home together. He must be dispensed with. He shall no longer support the family.
I've already arranged for that. In millions of cases, he's no longer able to do so.
And when he has ceased to be the breadwinner, he is no longer competent to represent the family politically. Women must vote.
I've already consented to that. I don't mind. Get on. The special task I want of you is to work on the minds of independent women, sow the seeds of discontent, talk of bonds and fetters, and so on. Get them out of the home for anything. Even higher education is better than nothing. It defers marriage, at least. What is your chief doctrine?
I preach equality of the sexes.
Nothing could be better. And you include sex equality, I hope.
Yes, Your Majesty, but that goes more slowly. Most women are conservative on that subject. They usually embrace suffrage first and later declare economic independence. They say each woman must vote and support herself, but they stop there.
Keep it up, nevertheless. You'll bring them round. Free love won't do, of course. Our people won't stand for it. It's revolting. All you have to do is to preach. Independence, independence, independence. And keep it up. You'll get them in time.
I am very hopeful too, Majesty. I use the same set of arguments in all three stages. I say woman is an individual, therefore she should vote. Woman is an individual, therefore she should be self-supporting. And woman is an individual, therefore she should be free from sex domination. In this way, when a woman has been brought to accept suffrage, she can be gently led on to from step to step. You understand.
Perfectly. Now, one more matter. No deception has ever been successfully foisted on humanity for any length of time without the help of a fine sounding watchword. Where would war have been if it had not been for its watchwords, self-defense, national honor, and patriotism? Where would asceticism have been without purity? Where would commercialism, have been without my watchword, prosperity? I presume you have a watchword too, have you not?
I have indeed. My watchword is freedom. I do all my work in its name.
Good, excellent. Harp continually on freedom.
That is my practice. I never cease calling upon women to be free. I never cease reminding them of their enslavement to the family, of the tyranny of fathers and husbands, of the drudgery of housework, of the wearisomeness of children, the monotony of home life. I urge them to submit no longer to the degradation of being mere females. I tell them, Your Majesty, I tell them that they are human beings.
Good idea. And I presume it strikes them as novel.
Always. The idea intoxicates them. It strikes them as something wonderful, beautiful, and new.
It's a great idea.
But of course, I make it plain that they can't be human beings in the home. They must work outside, sell their labor, commercialize themselves if they wish to become truly human beings.
That's the stuff. I see you know your business.
I never lose sight of my main object, Your Majesty, which is to wean women from the home. I assure them that their services to the family can be better performed by experts. I urge them to turn all their functions over to paid outsiders.
Admirable. That makes more openings for women and more business for me. Keep it up.
I tell them to hire specialists to minister to every want: servants for housework, teachers for their children, seamstresses for home sewing, entertainers to amuse the family. I know one woman who hires a professional grandmother to come see her children every day and bring them cookies. I tell them that this is the age of specialists, that homemaking too should be turned over to hired experts. This will set the wife and mother free to become a specialist in something herself, and that will take her out.
Good. But what do you do with the incurably domestic women who stick in the home like maggots in a cheese?
Yes, that sort of woman. To her, I talk municipal housekeeping. She likes that. I tell her the city is just part of her home. I begin with street cleaning and milk. I tell her that she is directly concerned with the milk supply because her baby drinks milk. Later on, shall tell her that she is directly concerned with the tobacco supply because her husband smokes tobacco, and with the coal supply because the family burns coal. Thus, I plan to gently lead her on. By the same token, I shall one day suggest that she ought to inspect slaughterhouses and canneries and ash dumps, and that it is her duty to supervise commerce and agriculture, to arbitrate labor disputes, preside over courts, concern herself with regulating the entire industrial, financial, and judicial systems of the country. I shall show her conclusively that there is no place to stop, that everything touches the home. But of course, that comes later. For the present, I begin with milk and street cleaning. It's so harmless, so nearby.
That's the way to work it.
But may I tell you confidentially, Your Majesty, a short time ago, I had a great despair.
How so?
You see, this drawing mothers out of the home as we are doing works havoc sometimes in family. People are beginning to say that the degradation of the race is largely due to it, and are tracing the increase in feeble-mindedness, insanity, prostitution, vice, and corruption to the lack of home training and the neglect of children. If this idea goes, we will have trouble.
How did you meet the situation?
I had an ingenious idea. I announced that it is precisely because of the evils in society that women are needed in politics and legislature.
Did they swallow that?
Lapped it up like water. By that means, I am coaxing hundreds of women out of the home on the plea of reforming the world, who would not leave it for any other purpose.
That comes near to being genius.
Thank you. I think too that the idea has a great future. It's this way. When all working class women have left the home to earn a living, then as their families become demoralized and society begins to suffer, the leisure class women will have to go too in order to reform the evils in which the other women's leaving the home has caused. In this way, I am smoking out some of the most cantankerously domestic women that ever darned socks. Take Mrs. John Martin. Even she has to leave the home once a year or so now to try to undo some of the harm which other women's not staying home has brought about. You get the idea.
Perfectly. But now tell me, what is your object in all this? Myself, I understand. I want to empty the home for my own purposes, to increase production. The more people there are at work, the larger my returns. That's simple. But I don't understand exactly what you are after.
I will tell you. My object is to get woman to revenge herself on man for his age-long domination. I want to teach her how to do without him and how to put him out of business. When he is no longer useful, he will have no power. Then women can assert her supremacy and take the reins of government in her own hands. I want to show her how to put man down where he belongs, reduce him to subservience. I want to enthrone women. I want to feminize the world.
I don't follow you there. My aim is to commercialize the world. I don't propose to hand it over to you. Man is a good friend of mine. He's made me what I am. I should hate to see him go under. It is with his consent that I have been calling women out of the home. But I don't think he foresaw that anything of this kind was likely to happen. I don't believe he thought that you were likely to come along. And what's more, I think when he really finds out what you are up to, he will take measures to put a stop to it.
A stop to it? Let him try. Let him try. That will mean a declaration of war, sex war. Very well. I'm gathering my forces for that now. Let men attempt to oppose us. Let them come. We shall be ready for them.
Outstanding. Thank you all very much. Yes. So this play
You
was,
introduce your extra actors.
oh, cameo appearance by Mann, Robert Andrews.
You say Sarah.
Sarah Stroke, sorry, if I didn't, Sarah Stroke, Susan Doolittle, and Pam Goffman. That was a lot of fun. As I said, first read in almost exactly 110 years ago, before the League for Political Education, which was a socialist organization in New York City. And 1 year before, just one door down the street, there's a plaque that says one of the Keene women, Catherine Notman at the time, was leading a referendum charge around the Adirondacks to try to get women the right to vote, which oddly enough, Prestonia Mann Martin was against at that point. Despite her interesting play and play with lots of things, but she was a socialist who was very concerned about conditions of work, as you can see, and what would happen if women did indeed come out of the family into the factories, aside from greedy capitalists getting richer.
The good side.
That's right, but she was against the right to vote, and you heard some of the language in here about, oh, let them play around with that. It won't do any harm. It's never made any difference to me. I can still make lots of money. Nobody's bothered me. So I think those were her real feelings, but Enid Mastroianni here sitting in the first row is a researcher who knows more about Prestonia Mann Martin than anybody alive, I think.
Probably.
Has pointed out that after women did have the right to vote in 1917 in New York and then later around the country, she wanted everybody to vote socialist. She was true to her.
You said, go vote, but vote for the socialists.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So any other
Was,
questions, thoughts? Or
was, Prestonia Martin, from the upper class? Was she,
Yeah,
working class?
she was wealthy because she had a very unusual situation. She was an only child. She didn't have any brothers or sisters. And both of her parents died within 7 months. So she got the whole kit and caboodle.
How old was she then?
She was in her early 30s. So she was old enough so she could be like, no, I'm not appointing a lawyer to handle this for me. She didn't have any brothers to take it. And, you know, her father didn't get remarried and her mother didn't live till 100.
she got
So,
all the money.
so she had money, which was very unusual.
Right.
It was this weird situation. She was an only child, she was an only daughter, and both of her parents died in the same year.
And she was born during the Civil War and died the year World War II ended. So.
World War II ended?
Yeah, World War II in 1945. And she was very much a person of her time. After the huge expansion of the industrial might at the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century, the factory conditions that show up in the play, all that was going on. That was part of the turmoil that she was living part of and was obviously trying to, find a way out of it. And the utopian community that she started up here near a number of our visitors here on Summerwood on Hurricane Mountain was about that, of trying to come together and make a new way of organizing your life. Albeit just in the summer, and it was handy if you had money, so you could support yourself there. But her idea was people did some work during the day and then they sat around in the afternoon and discussed the major issues of the time, and in the evening read plays, made up plays.
And then go back to the city in the autumn and put their things in place.
Right, and among the guests at her place, Jane Addams, famous for starting Hull House in Chicago, the first settlement house, and Lillian Wald, who started the similar one in New York City, public health nurse who started that whole idea of public health nursing connected with community support. They came here and were part of the gathering around the fireplace, talking about how to make the world a better place. And there's Upton Sinclair, who did the novel The Jungle, inspecting slaughterhouses, that reference in the play, was a guest here and then went and started his own community in New Jersey after that. So there was a connection between all that turmoil going on in society, which Prestonia was part of.
Also she was unmarried when she inherited the money. Had she been married, that money would have gone to her husband, even though it was her parents' money. So it was a combination of only child, parents dying in quick succession, her being old enough that she was trusted with the money, and that she was unmarried.
Did she ever marry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She got married in her late 30s to an Englishman.
How did that go?
Went okay.
And Paul Martin, her descendant, was supposed to be with us this afternoon,
Right.
but was unable to attend.
Yeah, she didn't have biological children. She adopted 3
Right.
children.
Didn't she have a theory about nurture over nature, or nature, yeah, nurture over nature, semi-experimental in her adoption?
Yes, she did. And it's kind of grim. And she wrote to H.G. Wells about this. Her idea was that nurture was more important. She was going to take these children, these babies who were like empty slates, and she was going to raise them to be like Shavian supermen. but it didn't work.
I would love to talk to you further. I haven't been, I've grown up in my summers at Glenmore. So I've done a piece about Glenmore. And I know that there was some rivalry between her and Thomas Davidson.
There was a big fight.
He's helped found the Fabian Society, but he split with the Webbs, Sidney and Beatrice Webb, because it didn't believe in socialism, which he believed. I assume that may have been part of the difficulty, but he believed somehow that education would solve all our social ills. Huh.
Yeah, the Fabians. Well, there was this idea that, okay, well, you had to perfect yourself before you could change society. Well, a bunch of people said, well, that's hopeless. We're not gonna wait to perfect ourselves. So they started the Fabian Society in England. And she kind of got wind of this, and she was editing the American Fabian magazine. And then John Martin, who was a member of the executive committee of the London Fabian Society with George Bernard Shaw, with the Webbs, with Havelock Ellis, with H.G. Wells. He came over here for a lecture tour and never looked back. They got married. But yeah, Thomas Davidson was not a socialist, and she was. And she and her family would come to Glenmore. And I can't imagine it was very hospitable to her. Because Thomas Davidson would get all these guys from Yale and Harvard and Columbia. And they, had this rugged life, and they were sleeping on the pine boughs and hiking up the mountain. And she'd show up with her parents. So I can't imagine that they really welcomed her too much. But she was formidable intellectually. She was educated as well as any woman could be. And according to Jane Addams, there was a big fight one night where they were like screaming at each other. And she went back and was kicked out and said, well, I'm starting my own. And she bought land right next door from the Deweys and started her own thing where she was going to prove to Thomas Davidson that her socialist idea was superior to his boys' club.
However, I had pictures of Davidson with a lot of women around him.
But they would have been subservient.
There were rumors that she had ideas of a romance with him and that he didn't pay her the time of day, but I don't think that's true.
Well,
He was so much older than she was.
there's suggested evidence he had a gay relationship with, the publisher, who supported him, and it was the money came. Famous
Pulitzer.
Pulitzer.
Davidson?
Yeah, it's suggested by somebody.
I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, it seemed very all this, these young guys and then sleeping on the pine bough.
My grandfather was one of them. But he had a very
outdoor thing to do.
So what you said, near to the Deweys, or the Deweys were part of it?
Yeah,
What Deweys, Melville Dewey?
no,
no, John Dewey, the
Oh, okay.
educator.
Okay.
but he was part of Glenmore too.
Yeah,
It was both.
Yeah, I mean, the house.
well, he owned land, or his sister
Well, he
did.
had the
something.
house off the Gambian.
On the corner there, or a big rock the other day.
Well, she bought the land for Summerbrook
Oh, she-
from the Deweys,
from them.
but I think it was his sister or sister-in-law or somebody.
Then after the massive success of this play, she continued her work and wrote a book. Her most famous book is called Prohibiting Poverty, which was published in 1933.
Wow.
Same year,
Impression.
Franklin Roosevelt is starting the Civilian Conservation Corps and the whole National Service Plan. And her book, her prescription, which is called something, anyway, there's another name for it, but the actual plan within this book.
National Livelihood Plan.
Right,
think it was.
something like that. And so that idea was for everybody between the age of 18 and 26 to be required to serve national service,
Mhm.
men and women both,
Mhm.
and go off and do useful projects, but much expanded version of the CCC that Roosevelt was starting. And she was very strong in it, got it published, and after some struggle, and there's some stories that she only got it published after Eleanor Roosevelt endorsed it and said she wanted 6 copies, or had sent 6
Well,
copies.
it's already been published.
They don't publish, yeah. So she sent
Eleanor
6 copies to
Roosevelt
the White
did
House.
ask for 6 copies. Eleanor Roosevelt said, I keep one always on my desk. And she gave the other copies to cabinet members. And she was obsessed with this and was talking about it to everybody.
I think it's a great
It
idea.
is a wonderful idea.
That's still a good idea. This was the depression had hit by then,
Absolutely, yeah.
and I mentioned it when I exchanged with you, my father was with the National Youth Administration, Roosevelt administration, which Eleanor Roosevelt's idea. I wonder if Prestonia was part of that idea, but it was the idea of having all the people up to 25 being educated or getting opportunities to go to college because they were all unemployed. And then when World War II came, that was the NIA. But I'm curious if Prestonia Mann Martin had some influence on the National Youth Administration.
Well, no, but the CCC, she definitely did. I've read a zillion histories of the New Deal, and they all treat it as if it just burst fully formed from FDR's brain. But it didn't. It was from her idea. And he was aware of it because Eleanor knew about it. See, I think she knew Eleanor from early on because they were both involved in the East Side Settlement, which was Lillian Wald's settlement house in New York. So I think they kind of went in the same circles. They were about the same age. Eleanor Roosevelt was a little bit younger. So I think she knew Eleanor Roosevelt, and I think she, there's correspondence between them that seems pretty casual. So yeah, I think Eleanor Roosevelt found out about it. She pitched it to Franklin along with everybody else. And I think that the Civilian Conservation Corps was drawn directly from her idea.
Is that what the book summarized? Or what was the thesis of the book?
Hmm?
What did her book, what was sort of her book summary?
Well, she wanted there to be a labor army where all 18 to 26-year-olds would be enlisted in this labor army. They would produce all the necessities and goods and services for all the rest of the Americans. And once you turn 26, you do whatever you want.
And apparently you had a free ticket forever, right?
Yeah,
You
because
didn't have to
all
work
the
again.
goods and services were provided for the next crop of youngsters.
It's funny, it sounds contradictory to the National Youth Administration, which was dedicated to training and educating people and giving them money to get an education. They like their country, not to labor for the welfare of everybody else, but to be educated, be off the streets and.
Well, they need doctors and stuff. But she talks about how you could just be a poet, or you could decide that you wanted to be rich and you could start producing or selling luxury goods.
Prestonia